Let's go this way. The electoral reforms process is ongoing. What would you say are some of the most urgently needed reforms that the National Assembly should focus on? Because time definitely is not on our side.
Well, clearly, we have to remove the ambiguities in the 2022 Electoral Act that leaves quite a lot of discretion. For instance, what you have currently in terms of electronic, what you call electronic transmission of results, is simply upload. You're uploading still pictures into a viewing portal. It is not a collation portal. So the National Assembly will have to, initiate some kind of system that incorporates both uploads and collation. Because what the confusion for 2023 was what you call glitch. And that glitch actually was simply something that ordinarily has no consequence for the election. But the politicians, they played it in a way that gave the impression that you were supposed to get collated results real time, but that's not what it is. What you had was an upload. So that ambiguity needs to be cleared in terms of what then happens. And then the Section 65 that gives INEC power to review results within 7 days also needs to be much more clear as to who should it be INEC, or there should be complaints, and what is the period that is required to discharge that review, so that a lot of the things that eventually end up in litigation can be cleared, just like they did with the Obingwa local government in Abia State. But much more, the review is intended to expand the democratic space. We are looking to see whether we can have more reserved seats for women, and that incidentally the Deputy Speaker and indeed the Speaker of the National Assembly are championing this very cause at this time. It will expand the democratic space. It will bring more vitality and more color to our democracy if we have more women in the legislature, which will resolve some of the very critical less than 10% of women you have in your legislature. That is not a balance. And I think that needs to be resolved in this current constitutional and electoral amendment. We need to begin to think about early voting. For you as journalists who work on election day, you may, and other, sensitive, critical election workers like civil society, medical doctors, and people of security agents who are deployed to work in elections can be given opportunity to have early voting like we have in many other places. Right. We need to be clear about what we want to do with our diasporans. Their contribution to our economy is massive in a way that we can't neglect. So we should be able to go into conversations about electronic or internet voting. But truth again is that your election cannot be better than your infrastructure. So we need to also shore up infrastructure in a way that it takes in people with disabilities. For instance, the structures, the buildings that we use for elections are not disability friendly. Many people on wheelchairs may not be able to have access to our body. We need to be able to relate this in a way that the laws can be more inclusive and friendly.
Right.
But to just surmise that, laws are not all that you require for credible elections. You need attitudinal change. You need a political class that is also reform-minded, that is thinking of free, fair elections. 60-70% of the shenanigans that you have in our electoral process are contributed by the politicians. You can just take, for instance, the legal, most times when people see, court cases after elections, 70% of them are actually internal party issues. They have nothing to do with the real conduct of elections. So the attitude of our political class and their response to reforms is also critical, because you can't make all the reforms, but if you have a political class that is vested in undue and dubious advantage, your laws, their work will be to circumvent the laws and see how they can also compromise the systems that can bring them to account. So it's a whole gamut of conversation that needs to happen. And that's why I've been recommending a multi-stakeholder conversation that will have politicians in the room, media, civil society, the security agents. Let us put a mirror before each of these stakeholders and say, how much are you contributing to free, fair, credible elections? The electorates themselves, who make themselves available to sell their votes, and the Boko Sebe mentality that has crept into our politics. All of these conversations needs to come, and it is not just laws that deal with that. Reforms will have legal reforms, and then there will be attitudinal reforms also.
All right, Mr. Ezenwa, I like the fact that you mentioned that attitudinal reforms, because one thing that has characterized Nigeria's politics is this do-or-die mentality that we see among our political class. But since you have touched on that, what do you think about, this same-day voting? Because that is also a proposal that's on the table. Some say to save costs and to also reduce, this level of maybe a compromise that we see with the system. Do you agree with this?
To be honest with you, like I said earlier, your elections cannot be any better than your infrastructure. Sometimes I do, with all due respect, think that many people who call for same-day voting and election do not know Nigeria. Nigeria is not Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Warrior, and all these places. There are backwater communities who are hard to reach, and their level of education, their level of understanding of even the current process that you are managing. Even those who talk about cost, you will have, if you, for instance, have these reserve seats and all of that, for those elections, you are going to have 5 ballot boxes. And for what you have currently now, you have about 3,000 ballot boxes that you have. So you have to produce additional ballot boxes. The voter education component that goes into the voters even understanding how to vote now, and the issues of ballots, the number of people who don't even know what to do with the ballots is still very, very spoiled votes is still very, very high. I think it should be an aspiration, but we need to gradually move to the point where we grow our infrastructure to be able to take care of our aspirations. I am happy to have election done in one day, but I am smart enough to know that in this Abuja where you live, just by Gwagwalada and Kujedia, there are places where you need to do 3-4 hours on a bike to be able to reach those places. And many of those places, development hasn't got there. But even if development doesn't get there, ballot boxes will get there. So we need to be nuanced and graduate our aspirations in a way that it takes cognizance of our condition, and then begin to work gradually to see how we meet our aspirations.